Hi, this is Veronica checking my audio.
Hello, good day. This is Sergio, your Mary interpreter.
And thank you, Sergio.
Sound good and look good, Veronica. Thanks.
Thanks.
Good evening. Nice to see you, Sophia and Danny.
Hi, Alex. Nice to see you.
Oh, there's Amy too.
Hello, Sophia. This is Sergio, your interpreter.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, Sergio.
I wanted to thank you for the pace you went at last night. It was beautiful. I could follow you perfectly well. Didn't miss any endings or anything. I just wanted to thank you for it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that feedback. I'll do the same pace this evening. So,
Thank you. By the way, beautiful pictures on your back.
oh, thank you. Yeah, it's my Zoom background since we're virtual.
Oh, it's virtual. I thought it was real.
Oh no, it is real, but like since we're all virtual, I wanted
Oh.
everyone to have some.
Yeah, well, yours is beautiful. And thank you again.
We're happy to have you with us again, Alex. I know you were off for a couple of meetings, but happy to have you here again.
Well, thank you. And I saw it went pretty well. I looked at the recording, so you guys did great.
Great.
So shall we? I know we're right at 6 o'clock. Danny, it's your meeting to facilitate and run, so I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, and thanks, Alex, and I appreciate everybody. I'm just kind of looking for everyone that's on the meeting, if I recognize some names from our District 7. So Alex, the one thing that didn't come through for me because tonight is an official outreach meeting with our community members, and specifically for District 7. I didn't have the meeting notes. I couldn't get them. And I want to make sure that I specifically open the meeting as we need to. So I'm wondering if someone could send me those again.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Let me forward that to you real quick.
Well, I've got them here. I can try, and I want to apologize in advance to everybody on the meeting tonight. I don't have all of these opening notes memorized. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read them really quickly, because there are some things that we really must say in our opening to the group. And I don't want to, and I want to make sure that I don't mess anything up by ad-libbing or talking about it. But anyway, so, and before I get into that, I just want to thank everybody. This is technically an outreach workshop for District 7. And Alex, I think today we know District 7 as being the Farm Hill neighborhood group, the Edgewood Park, Mount Carmel, and then I believe it's parts of Palm Park neighborhoods. Would you consider?
So District 7 covers Farm Hill, Canyon, and Edgewood Park.
Okay.
Those would be the three that
neighborhoods that we would associate our district to. And you're later going to show everyone district maps as they currently reside by neighborhoods and by zones and by the data that we have. And then tonight we're going to learn a lot more about redistricting, how we can all be involved in that, and then communities of interest, which was a new term for me. So I was really excited to be involved in that. So if without further ado, what I'm going to do is kind of look at my notes. So sorry that you're going to see the top of my forehead. I hope that I hope that I've done a good dye job on the top of my hair. So good evening, and thank you for tuning into our District 7 redistricting workshop hosted by the Advisory Redistricting Committee and Redwood City staff. Attending the meeting today via teleconference are community members, Amy Buckmaster, who is an at-large district member, Gardner and member Gardner, ARC member Gardner, and ARC member Lisa Hicks Demansky, and myself. And I am representing District 7. This meeting is being streamed live on the city's YouTube channel, and a recording will be posted following this workshop. Sorry again, this is so dry. I wish I could add some things into it, but we're offering Spanish translation for all ARC meetings and workshops through a dial-in conference line. And we heard our interpreter congratulate Sophia for last meeting for going slow enough where he could actually translate well. So I'm gonna, I tend to talk fast, so I'm gonna try and slow myself down as well. If you wish to hear the meeting in Spanish, please dial, I'm gonna say the numbers, 669-900-6833. And then you enter the meeting ID 346-830-8566 and a password 1017. Again, I'll repeat the phone number 669-900-6833, meeting ID 346-830-8566 and password 1017. That's a lot to remember for any language. I am now going to turn it over to our translator to give these instructions in Spanish. So thank you.
Le recordamos que la reunión también podrá escucharse en español directamente, pero a través de otro canal. Para ello, tendrán que marcar el 669, el área, y el 900-6833. Les repito, área 669-900-6833 y después la identificación de la reunión, el ID que se lo va a pedir es 346-830-8566. Repito, 346-830-8566. Y la contraseña que tienen es 1017. 1017. Les repito que si quieren hablar, para solicitar la palabra pongan asterisco 9, lo veremos y de inmediato después con asterisco 6 podemos activar el sonido. Los esperamos en la reunión.
Thank you so much, Sergio. I also want to announce that we have slightly changed our virtual meeting format for the safety and security of today's discussion. Members of the public will be asked to please raise your hand on Zoom by either selecting the hand icon in the reactions menu down in your toolbar or by pressing *9 if you've just joined us by phone. We will call speakers in the order that hands were raised and will prompt you to unmute when it's your time to speak. You may also use the chat feature to send your comments to the host, which will be reviewed and released to the full group. And before I turn it over to the Assistant City Manager, Alex Kojikian, for an overview of the workshop, I really want to emphasize, please use the chat button because every question is important. Anytime you need some clarification, we want to hear from you. We want to hear you interact. So please use that chat feature. And if you're not really familiar with Zoom, it's at the bottom of your screen, probably right in the middle, and you'll see a chat feature and you can send a message to the whole group. Super, super important. Or again, raise your hand and some Alex or Sophia or somebody will be calling upon you. So let's try and make it as much of a conversation tonight as we can, get people's questions answered. And Alex, thanks for sending me the notes. And I'm sorry I had to read everything.
No problem. And great job on short notice with the notes. I appreciate it, Danny. So good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Kojikian. I'm the Assistant City Manager here with the City of Redwood City. I want to first thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us at our 7th workshop to date. And we're going to have a total of 8 of these, with our final one being this Saturday at 10 a.m. And that's going to be completely in Spanish, that meeting, but there'll be translation for English speakers at that meeting. But thank you for being here. And just to give a little bit of overview and background, in 2018, 2019, the city went through a transition from what is at-large elections, where the electorate constituents would vote for all council members, to a district-based election. And so we went through a district elections process to get to a district map. And in November of 2020 was the first time that the city held district elections, and it was for 4 districts. It was 1, 3, 4, and 7, which were up for election. And we were only going to use that map for one election, which was November 2020, because there was going to be the updated United States Census numbers, which took place actually. And I believe we just got the final census numbers, I think late last week. So we're working on a map because we're going to be pivoting this, the engagements from taking community of interest testimony into actually drawing district maps. And so there'll be more information hopefully next week about that process. And so we're holding a redistricting process because we have to update that district elections map. The city council this time around decided to have an advisory redistricting committee, which is 11 residents who were appointed, one from each of the current city council districts, and then 4 members from at large. The city also retained redistricting partners as its demographer consultant. And so Sophia Garcia, who is here with us today and who will be leading us through this presentation, is from Redistricting Partners. And our hope is that this will be interactive. And so kind of a little bit of back and forth to be able to take down all the information that you provide at this meeting today. And what we'll be doing is taking all the information from all our previous meetings and all the surveys that we have received, and synthesizing the maps that we received, and synthesize all that information into a report to the Advisory Redistricting Committee, who will be meeting later on this month to discuss more about district mapping process. So with that, without further ado, I know Sophia, okay, you're back on the screen. Wonderful. Welcome, and please take it from here.
Okay, thank you for those introduction remarks from Danny and Alex. I will start sharing my screen and let me know when you guys can see it. I think it's this one. Okay. Are you able to see the PowerPoint? Okay, wonderful. I got a thumbs up from Alex. So yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the District 7 Outreach Workshop. We've gone through the same kind of outline with every single workshop that we've done with the Redwood City Community Outreach, where we've done an introduction from a commissioner. Alex or another staff member has given a more explanation on the process, and then I've gone through this particular presentation. And we also do a mapping presentation at the end of the presentation. I know Danny walked through what folks can do in terms of commenting on the Zoom, and staff has made this great visual by showing what you can do to raise your hand, lower your hand, you press that reactions button. To do that, you can click, if you don't see it automatically, you click on those 3 dots that say more. By raising your hand, and then also again, please add any questions or comments to the chat. So we're so excited for you to be here with us this evening. I see a couple of folks that have been on all the calls, and then I hope we see some new folks with us this evening. So as Alex mentioned, you went through an initial districting process a couple of years ago, and this time around in 2021, there's a couple things that are different. We have the Fair Maps Act, which is a new California law that has cities and counties adhere to new outreach regulations, more transparency. You have to have a website up for a decade. So all this information will be on the website that we'll show you at the end of the presentation. And it's honestly one of the best, I think, maintained redistricting websites that I've seen. It's very clear. All of the forms are there, that they update the website regularly. And so this right now, what you're looking at is what your council districts currently look like with the outline of the city. So these will change because we do have those new census data up. Finally, we have that final census data, but this is currently what they look like, but they will be changing by the end of the process. So the things that we'll be covering this evening, we have the agenda here for you. We'll talk over the basics of redistricting so that everyone has the same understanding going into this meeting. If this is your first time with us, then we want you to be able to feel confident to give testimony at the end of this presentation. We'll give you a little bit more background on the Advisory Redistricting Committee. You also hear it referred to as the ARC or ARC. We'll go through the timeline, which Alex just mentioned, and we are going to quickly, at the end of Saturday, we'll then be moving into another phase. And so we'll give you the timeline view with all the dates on that. We'll talk about the traditional redistricting principles, which are the principles that the ARC and the city will be using to look at draft maps and to approve a final map. Communities of interest is the concept that is been really uplifted in this process in 2021 under the Fair Maps Act, under the media and the public knowing more about this process. That is really a criteria that we're going to go into pretty in-depthly, talk about it, talk about how you can give specific feedback and testimony for your community of interest. At the end of the presentation, we'll review the map tool, and the tool that Redwood City has gone with is called Districtor. It is an online mapping tool out of Tufts University, and it's used by a lot of jurisdictions and cities across the state. And so we'll show you where exactly you can use that to submit feedback for Redwood City. And then we will review the public hearing schedule. And again, this is the final outreach hearing that we're doing in English, and we have a Spanish version one happening on Saturday. So we'll get started. So what is redistricting? So in the last time you went through this process, you went through an initial districting process where you moved from at-large to a districted system. And so this is the first time that your city is going through a redistricting process. So that is the process of adjusting district lines every 10 years after the release of the US Census. So it happens every year ending in a 1. So all of us hopefully filled out our census forms last year. We know a lot of people on this call and staff were really involved in that process to fill out the census. And so this is what we've been waiting for, is those final data. Some really well-known examples of this redistricting process, again, that we hear in the media, or maybe we hear it a bit talked about more, are the federal and state legislative districts. And those in California are being redistricted through a California Independent Redistricting Commission, and it's different in other states. But in California, those district lines will be talked about and finalized by an independent commission. But here in Redwood City, you're also going through this process right now. And you're going through the process to ensure that the city council districts are rebalanced based on the new census data. And also beyond creating districts of equal population, which is the #1 criteria in this process, we're also going through redistricting to empower local communities and preserve voting rights. So I'm happy that everyone is here so that we can hear what you have to say about your city and the districts. So the Advisory Redistricting Committee is a committee that was appointed by the City Council. And we've had some committee members at all of our outreach hearings. So we're really happy that they've been here. I know Danielle has been at most of these, and all of them have been asking really wonderful questions, clarifying questions. And this is a space here for the outreach hearings for the ARC to listen, to absorb, to again, ask any clarifying questions of members of the public. So we're happy to be here, and you have, their job isn't over. They're gonna then after this process talk about all the feedback that they've heard, but we're really happy that they've been consistent throughout each of these outreach hearings. So the Advisory Redistricting Committee, again, was appointed by the City Council to assist the council in conducting community outreach and recommending a new City Council district map. The goals of the ARC are, again, to conduct community outreach hearings, to help identify communities of interest from the public. Then when we move out of the phase of listening to outreach, they will work to draft new city council maps from the input that they've heard throughout all these meetings, and then also other avenues that we've been receiving testimony. Then they will recommend a map or multiple maps for the city council to review and consider, and the council will be the one to finalize a plan. So they've been doing a lot of work here with us, and again, in a pretty compressed timeline due to the late release of that census data. So we've been alluding to this in the phases. Here's a wonderful graphic that the staff has put together. This timeline is also on the website, so we will show you where this timeline is once we get through the full presentation. And right now we are still in phase 2, which is the phase that has that blue highlighted section over it. And we've been doing these outreach hearings since the end of August. Today, it's October 6th. We're here for District 7. And after tonight's meeting, we will have one more outreach hearing on October 9th, this Saturday, and that will be a citywide workshop in Spanish. So we're still in that phase of listening to the public, of gathering that testimony. At the end of October, then we will move to phase 3, where the ARC committee members will discuss all the testimony that they've heard and begin to draft maps. So you are welcome, and we welcome you to all of the meetings that are happening for the ARC and for the City Council, for you to give testimony, for you to have your voices heard. And so here, we're here to gather a community of interest testimony, and then in phase 3, you'll be able to discuss and comment on draft maps. So the traditional redistricting principles are the guiding principles and criteria that guide us through our mapping process. They're here, they're upheld by courts nationally, and these are also the criteria that are in the Fair Maps Act, and we'll be using these again to draft any maps, and then the final plan will also adhere to these criteria. They're also ranked order criteria, and so the first one, and why we're here, and why we've been waiting so long for that final census data, is the first criteria of creating districts of relatively equal size. So we've talked about this a little earlier in the presentation, but another thing to really note for this first criteria is that when we're talking about what data we're talking about using census data. And what that means is that it's the total count of people, not citizens. We're also talking about census data in terms of not only the data itself, but the geography that is attached to it. So we will show you what we mean in terms of the geography or census blocks when we review the districtor tool, but we receive the census data in a hierarchy of geography, and the census box is the smallest unit of geography that we receive that data. And so that's what it will be based on. They're one and the same. So we're all kind of learning this, we have a lot of learning to do in terms of the census and data and geography, but that's why we're here to help and walk you through it. The second criteria is contiguous, which is to create districts that geographically touch one another. So in other terms, you can't have an open-ended district or something that hops over another district. They all have to be together. Maintaining communities of interest is the concept that we'll get to quite in depth in the next couple of slides. You can also hear communities of interest referred to as COIs or COIs, which is capital C, capital O, capital I. The other criteria is the ARC and the city can look at other government lines. So on the districtor mapping tool, we have the municipalities of the city and also some school districts. So those are data points and data sets that the ARC and staff have elevated, and they're something that you are able to look at and review on districtor. And if there's other government lines out there that you'd like the ARC or the city to consider, that's something that you can come forward and testify and uplift. The other criteria is keeping districts compact. So this could mean in some cities, districts that look neat or aren't having funny shapes. But this can be in two different ways, as we can look at it and it can appear compact, or it can also be functionally compact. And what functionally means is that how do you kind of move through the city? Is there a geographic boundary or another sort of boundary that makes it difficult for residents to move across or move through the city? And so that could be functionally where you'd create a district and have it be compact. Because this is a lower criteria, just because if there is a district that looks funny in a draft map or the final map, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's been gerrymandered. The ARC or the city may look at that and maybe want to maintain a community of interest, and therefore may have a district that looks a little funny in order to look at that third criteria. So it's something to keep in mind, but again, it's something to consider along with all these other criteria. So communities of interest is one of those terms that we kind of only hear once a decade, but it is a redistricting term. But at its core, what the concept of communities of interest is that we recognize that residents of the city of Redwood City are experts of your community, that you navigate your city differently than other residents, that you innately are aware of city services and how you use other city services. And so they have this term communities of interest for the redistricting process, but innately we recognize that you are experts of your community. It's also about bringing like-minded people together for representation. They're the building blocks of districts. Again, that's why we've had so many outreach hearings and are asking folks to give us as much testimony as they can. And there's such a wide variety of communities of interest that people will come forward with. Some of the most well-known examples of communities of interest are cultural and language minorities, but that can be such an extensive list. And on the next slide, we'll give you some examples. Because we are talking about communities of interest being innately talking about people's experiences, we want folks to know that they're subjective. So we may hear competing communities of interest. We may hear folks who maybe utilize a space in different ways. And because of that, we want to remind the ARC, members of the public, redistricting partners, staff, anybody listening, to remain open-ended and inclusive as possible as we listen to testimony from folks who are here to speak to the ARC. Some communities that are covered under the Federal Voting Rights Act include race and ethnicity, and the groups that we would be creating any Federal Voting Rights Act district would be Latinos, Asians, and African Americans. However, it's really important to note in this process that race cannot be a predominant factor in drawing districts unless legal counsel has directed us to draw a Voting Rights Act district. So in the coming slides, we will help people kind of think through beyond race, what are other things that bind your community together, because we know that a lot of people look at race and ethnicity as a community of interest of theirs, and we recognize that. But for this process, we want to kind of help you think through additional things that tie your specific community together, so that the ARC can consider that in this process. So there, again, it's such a wide variety of examples, and we have heard a variety of examples in the previous 6 meetings on communities of interest. We could hear religious facilities, school districts has been a common theme, urban and downtown. We've heard of flood zones as being a community of interest. Homeowners and renters is actually one that I've heard at a meeting a couple of weeks ago, where they gave over 7 hours of public testimony, and they had that same city had a meeting last night where I think it was again about 5 hours of testimony, speaking about a rent control ordinance, where we heard tenants and renters and also homeowners and landlords. And that was just a wonderful example of competing communities of interest, of hearing the passion and the differences and experiences that come with being either a renter or a homeowner. And for those competing communities of interest, we welcome them. And that would be the job of the advisory redistricting committee to talk through those when we move into phase 3. So just because you may hear someone who you disagree with doesn't mean that we don't also want to hear your testimony or what you have to say on the matter. So under the Fair Maps Act, and this is something that is different from the process that the city went through a couple of years ago, there are explicitly some communities of interest that the ARC and the city would be disallowed from considering as a community of interest. And again, this is under the Fair Maps Act, otherwise known as AB 849, if you would like to look it up or find out more information. And so those particular communities of interest are political party affiliation, incumbents, and political candidates. So what does this mean? This means that if a member of the public comes forward and gives testimony, and it is your right to give testimony to members who represent you in your community. But if you gave testimony in any one of these communities of interest, the advisory redistricting committee and the city council would be disallowed from being considered that testimony as a community of interest under this new law. So you're welcome to give testimony, but just know that they will not be able to consider that as community of interest when they're drafting maps. Another thing to think about that is really difficult for the ARC to consider are communities of interest that are citywide. And you might be asking yourself, why is that difficult to consider as a community of interest? And that's because we are talking about redistricting. So we're talking about, having those districts that you currently have. They're not going away. They're going to change and move. So anything that, if you come forward saying the whole city is your community of interest, we implore you to think about if there's a neighborhood that you identify with, even if there's other pockets of the city. If you have multiple communities of interest testimony, that's wonderful. We would love for you to come forward with that. But again, we are in a redistricting process and we are talking about creating and rebalancing those districts. So that's another thing to just keep in mind as you're giving your testimony. So I know we've thrown quite a bit at you. The concept of communities of interest may still be a little bit confusing. And so these 3 questions are here to help guide you in your process as you give testimony to the ARC, because we do want them to consider your testimony. And so to do that, we ask you to ask yourself, ask your community, your neighbors, these 3 questions. And the first one is, does the community have a shared culture, characteristic, or bond? So this is a really wonderful question to ask yourself if you want to come forward as having race or ethnicity as a community of interest, to think through additional things that bond your specific community together. Once you've got that, we would love for you to ask yourself, can your community be mapped? What is the geography of it? This is particularly important when you are giving verbal or written testimony, because we don't want to misinterpret what your testimony is. We want the ARC to consider it. And so if you could give us street names or specific locations, a neighborhood name, something that we can tie to and be able to map. Of course, if you're going to use Districtor or if you're submitting a paper map, we'll be able to get that geography that you've done yourself. But this is really important if you're doing that verbal or written testimony, is to help make sure that we don't misinterpret what you have to say. The third question is tied to representation, and that is, how would you describe the community's relationship with the jurisdiction and how it is affected by policy decisions made by elected officials? And so this for you would be the city council. So how would you describe your community's relationship with the city council, how it governs? Is your community of interest currently split? Is your community of interest currently together? Does that have negative effects on you, positive effects on you? And so again, that is the tie to, we understand redistricting is about representation is about creating opportunities for you to have elect people who represent you. And so that is that third question to keep in mind. So we've hopefully you are ready to give testimony in any of the ways that we have available for you. But before we get there, we have a little quiz that we'll go through. And again, I know a lot of people have seen this. This is a repeat for many folks, but again, hopefully this is new to some other people. So you can feel free to raise your hand or talk amongst yourself. These are meant to sort of just give examples and also kind of help you think through what would make sense to come forward and speak to the ARC about. Talked a little bit about this one already if you were paying attention, but the first one is a group of renters who live downtown testify to the city's redistricting committee. Would this be considered as a community of interest? And again, yes, it definitely can. So if you've, again, thought through this, definitely renters across the board can be considered as a community of interest. They're distinct, they can be mapped. We can get the data. We can also hear your experiences, and they share a common policy interests, and they are different from homeowners. Again, that is something that we've heard talked about, and you can definitely come forward with that testimony. Oh, I see a raised hand from Joanna.
Yes, if it's time to give testimony, I have a considerable amount to give, but I'd like to have others in the community, if they wanted to go first, if there is no one that's going to make testimony at this time, then I'd like to do it.
We still have a couple of slides to get through, but I will lean on the staff to see if how you would like to handle that. So I'll let Alex answer that question.
Joanna, it's great to see you, by the way. I missed meeting in person, so it's wonderful seeing you. If you want to, you can do it now. What we had is just a couple more slides just to give examples. I think if other people, if you want to just see other things to consider, do you want to hold off for the next couple slides?
Sure.
And then we'll take the testimony? Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Okay, perfect.
This is exciting. I'm excited that we have people here. So I'll go through these next slides not too quickly because we want to be mindful of any Spanish speakers. But the second question is, a group of neighborhoods on the eastern side of the city are susceptible to flooding. Could this group of neighborhoods be considered as a community of interest? So if you're thinking through it and saying maybe, yes, definitely. This is actually communities of interest that we've heard in other outreach hearings. So this is a wonderful example. So a community of interest could not only just be like a singular street or a particular location, it could be a group of neighborhoods. So while the whole city is difficult to have as a community of interest, multiple neighborhoods definitely make sense for this process. They can be easily mapped. Again, they share common policy interests, and that could be addressed by the city. So a bit different from renters. This other example is different from the other two. And this one is a group of business owners with a focus on ensuring there's ample parking, clean streets, and consistent police patrols around the central business district. Could a group of business owners who are concerned about their businesses in the central business district be considered as a community of interest? So if you're kind of thinking through this, definitely. So this group of people share a specific location. They have similar needs for public services. Maybe we have a lot of similar things that they care about as business owners, and with a focus on this particular district. So absolutely, folks who are concerned about their businesses can come forward. So I believe we have one more example. Again, pretty left field from the other couple. And this one is a statewide group for people who are fans of the Giants testify to the local city redistricting committee. Could this one be considered as a community of interest? It's pretty different. So if you're kind of shaking your head at this one, you're correct. So no, but let's talk about why this doesn't make sense for the ARC. So it's important that a community of interest is distinct enough to draw on a map. This particular group, it overlaps through the entire state. And also the city council doesn't really have anything to say about which baseball group you're a fan of or have any agency over the Giants themselves. But if you're thinking through let's kind of think through a little bit how this could make sense for the ARC. So my favorite example for this is if you're a part of an adult recreation league. I personally was a part of a volleyball league in my city. And so it was important for us to have well-lit facilities, for there to be air conditioning, for there to be multiple places for us to do that as a recreation league. And so if you have you're a part of your own recreation league as an adult, as a kid, no matter the age, that could be something that you could be concerned about from the city, and maybe want more green spaces or more indoor spaces to recreate. So that could definitely be considered as a community of interest in terms of who you're a fan of for a professional league, unless they were in the city of Redwood City. That doesn't necessarily make sense for this redistricting process. So Alex, would you like me to continue with this and do the districtor presentation? I just want to be mindful.
No, I think it would be great to get the testimony, and hear from the neighborhood, hear from the district, just about what is communities of interest for the group. I think this would be the appropriate time. Additionally, you can say it right now, you can give your testimony, but if you're not comfortable, you can always fill out a form, which is in front of you on this screen. You could also do a map that we also have online, or even use the software. And let's do the testimony right now, and then we can go through the tutorials about using the software, because that'll really be important, or even how to use the paper maps as we get into the next phase of this process, which is actually drawing districts, kind of like what we did the last time with just district elections. That'll be this next phase starting next week or the week after, probably on the 18th. So I think let's take the community of interest information at this point, and then we can just talk about all the next steps and the tools.
Okay, wonderful. I will stop sharing my screen then. And if folks, after they give their testimony, we can go through the website after that, or finish the presentation just for consistency's sake, since we've done that with the rest of the ones. But I'll mute myself and I can let staff kind of facilitate. So.
Yeah, and we'll be taking notes. And so if you want to, you can verbally, and I see Joanna's hands raised. And so we'll start with you, Joanna, but if you have even testimony that you want to put in the chat box, all that stuff is being saved. And so we'll be putting a report together for the advisory redistricting committee. That's what redistricting partners will be doing as being our city demographers. So anything you say here, it's being recorded anyway. So we'll have that information. We're going to be logging it down, but if you want to write it in, feel free to do that as well. So Joanna, good evening.
Good evening, Alex. Thank you. So I've been collecting information. We've been putting this out on our Farm Hill neighborhood website, out on our social media. So I've been collecting information, and I was actually part of the last time, the end of the process. So I was part of it with our neighborhoods as well during the last process. So some of the things that I feel that the Farm Hill neighborhood, I'm sorry, for those who don't know, I'm the chairwoman of the Farm Hill Neighborhood Association. And so some of the issues that we face here in Farm Hill that are unlike others is our risk of wildfires and our extensive PG&E outages that occur as a result of the wildfire risk. We have a very difficult time getting our families down safely downtown. Unless we're in a car, it's difficult to get our kids and our parents, our grandparents downtown. So that's a unique, transportation route issue for the Farm Hill neighborhood. We'd love to send our kids down on bikes, but we're too far to walk, but it's not necessarily safe enough to do so. I think that separating the districts by including the police beats is very important, because that data and what happens in that neighborhood, that's really important to consider. bus routes, parks. In our neighborhood, we have Stolstaff, Red Morton, and now Magical Bridge. Our schools are Kennedy, Roosevelt, Roy Cloud, Woodside High School, and Kenyatta College. So that would be very important to consider. Roosevelt Elementary Schools, where my son goes. And I know there they have a specialized program for autistic children. And Farm Hill is a neighborhood that has a lot of families with school-aged children. So that's an important factor. We also have a lot of seniors in Farm Hill. Our interests here are the environment. We care about nature and animals and the trees. Our biggest church is Peninsula, the PCC, and we have the community center on Farm Hill. Our major thoroughfares are Alameda, Jefferson, Farm Hill, the access to 280 and Roosevelt. Our neighborhood where we shop at Key Market, we shop at Jefferson and Roosevelt Plaza, we shop at Woodside Plaza. We frequent a lot of small family-owned businesses that are in the neighborhood that we'd like to keep that in our district as well. On the issue of something about representation with city council. So for instance, when cuts to fire service happens, that really impacts our Farm Hill neighborhood. So that would be something there. I think that's just about my list for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Appreciate that. Any other participants want to provide some communities of interest testimony this evening? Or write it in the comments. I see Danny writing in the comments.
Yeah, Alex, hey, I just wanted, we all see most everyone's names on the meeting tonight, and a lot of folks are super in tune with what's happening in the community and follow community engagement and follow city. And then there are some folks tonight that maybe this is their first engagement. And Johanna, you are so in tune and know your neighborhood, and as a chairwoman, really have set a pace for knowing what's happening in the community. But if anybody on this call tonight, this is their first shot at it, it's the first time they've been on a city screen, please, there are no wrong answers, no right answers. This is just about you communicating how you feel connected to your city, or maybe how you don't feel connected. But it's a way for us to think about how we redistrict. Because if you remember, the 2018 process really focused on neighborhoods and geographic data. And this whole community of interest idea is so important to think about when those boundaries begin to shape because of this new census data. So communities of interest took me a while to grasp. And I just appreciate everybody kind of speaking up, even if you're not comfortable, or letting us know how we reach people that may be a little shy to speak up. So Johanna, thank you for doing that for us in District 7 too.
There is a hand up. Elle Schofield has their hand up.
Yes, I'm Lisa Schofield, and I live on the Recreation Goodwin entrance to Stolstaff Park. And I really appreciated that District 7 included our little area here, because it's sort of a little annexed area. And we have a lot of the same community of interest issues that Johanna talked about, with regard to schools, with regard to the park especially, and the wildfire issues and the police and security issues with Stolstaff Park and shopping and all those kind of things. So I was really pleased when we were grouped together with Farm Hill in the last districting, and I would hope that that would be considered for the next one. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that feedback. It's great.
Sorry, Lisa, what was the name of the neighborhood? Or staff heard that? I didn't get that.
Okay, we're actually part of the Woodside Plaza Association, but it really makes a lot of sense for us to be in District 7.
So it's the Goodwin. It's going up right next to Stolsaf Park. So it's
Correct.
just west of Alameda.
Correct, exactly. I think actually right now it's Fernside, right? Maybe it's West.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
It's going over.
yeah.
Yeah, that
So
is
it's-
correct.
It's just a little piece that's dug out, and then right behind us is Woodside Hills.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
City of Woodside. So it backs into the city of Woodside, and then on the border over towards the northern edge is where it connects to the farm
Correct.
area in Stolsaf.
correct. That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Great. Thank you for that testimony.
I also saw a question, Alex, in the chat about and census data and districtor. So I wanted to answer that. We do have the new 2020 census data and districtor. And so I can do that map tool demonstration, and we will still finish up the presentation, but it is in there, and I will show you the community of interest maps and how you can draw a district map. So we're really excited about that. And you can submit draft maps now. So
So before we move forward, just, if there's any more testimony, I'd love to hear that right now. If not, please feel free. We showed the forms previously. You can always send an email to districtelections@redwoodcity.org. So if it's not hitting you now and you want to provide that testimony, feel free. We've been collecting all of that. And so we'll be synthesizing all that information to report out to the Advisory Redistricting Committee. And you can do that all throughout this process. Communities of interest don't end. At this point, you can continually, provide that feedback along with, as we start moving forward and transition into actually district mapping, you can keep sending maps all the way through to the very end of this process for not only the Advisory Redistricting Committee to review, but also the City Council when they take this up as well. So with that, I guess if there isn't any other testimony, we good from the group of participants on this call, then I would just ask Sophie to continue on with our presentation and start going over some of the tools that we have and just next steps.
Absolutely. Let me, there it is, screen 2. Okay. Alex spoke about the survey, and so we'll get through that on the website. And Alex has said this too as well. So there are 2 types of map submissions that the ARC and the council would love to receive from you. That's the community of interest maps. And here, Alex, it does say that we've had that date on the slide that they can receive them up until August 20th. But if you want to confirm that they can do that beyond the date, I would like for you just to clarify that.
Anything that we receive will be part of the record. So as we get this, it will be included in all our agenda packets. So, if you want to, more the merrier, please send it, and it will be part of the public record. So
Okay.
we'll continually accept it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that clarification. Districtor, so this is as I said a little bit earlier in the presentation, Districtor is a tool that's being used by a lot of jurisdictions across the country and in the state. And so it's really important that you use the specific link for the Redwood City site, and that link is up here in the PowerPoint, but also on the website. So that's really important that you stick to your Redwood City link if you want to give testimony for Redwood City. So that makes it really easy for you just to use that specific link. There's also the what we're calling placemats, which are large pieces of paper that have the outline of your city. And for the community of interest forms, it has the neighborhoods as a file there that you can draw. And we will be, I'm not sure if we already gave them to you or we'll be giving you new ones that have the breakdown of the census blocks. So then you can also use the paper mat to print it out or pick it up to draw your specific district maps. And Alex, do you want to remind folks where they can pick these up? Because I know that you can definitely print it online, but if you don't have access to a printer, there are places in the city where you can pick these up. So I'll let Alex update us on that.
So these maps are all at our public facilities, but you could decide to do the communities of interest. But I know that I just received, I think this afternoon, kind of a draft map with the new census data. So I'm still doing my quality assurances before I release that out to the public. And so I'm hoping I can get that map out hopefully next week. But you can get any of these maps, and that new map that'll have the census numbers. It'll be available at all our city facilities, but I'm also working on having drop-in hours as well at the downtown library and at City Hall. So we'll have that available so that, you know, if people aren't comfortable doing this stuff online, taking a picture and emailing it to district elections, could always come down to City Hall or the downtown library beginning October 18th to fill these maps out or get on the Districtor software to map. And then also we'll have bilingual staff available as well for any assistance that might be needed as well. So that's kind of what I have planned on our end. But you can always just do it easily, just printing it out at home, taking a pic, you know, doing it and taking a picture and sending it back into us as well.
Okay, wonderful.
And I see Joanna's hand up.
Okay.
Thank you, Alex. I just had a quick question about the maps, the paper ones. You may remember that last time it was difficult to read the maps because the demographer had chose some streets that weren't necessarily our most popular or used streets. Have we fixed that in these new maps? Are we using, it would be helpful to have streets that are easily identifiable so people can sort of gauge where they're drawing.
And that's exactly, Joanna, you're right on my comments today about what I'm doing on my quality assurances. And that's something, you know, looking at the major streets, and then also making sure the numbers are big and the blocks are a little bit bigger. The last map that we had the last time were smaller chunks. And so I'm trying to make it a little bit bigger so that it's just easier for people to work with. And so that's kind of what I'm literally hot off the press like 2 hours ago, that was kind of, you know, going through my review of those maps before we get it out to the public. And so I'll be meeting with redistricting partners at 9:30 tomorrow to go over my edits with the map to make sure that it's all ready for public consumption.
Thank you,
And
Alex.
Alex, maybe a clarification. Won't there be two maps available for those of you that like to think about the districts by neighborhood? The boundaries will be defined as they currently are defined by neighborhoods. And then there will also be another map that is defined by our election districts, like our precinct districts. Won't there be two different versions so people can use as a reference point?
So it'll be one version basically from what I'm working on right now, Danny, and it's not going to be, I'm not layering the neighborhood associations or the districts. It's really, you're going to see the main borders of, you're going to see the city limits and then the main kind of thoroughfares and, you know, highways and streets and all that stuff. And there's clumping that's going on, kind of more neighborhood based. You'll be able to make it out on the map, but it's just really, you know, trying to let people, you know, start with a blank canvas in doing this. And I see Joanna's hand up, or is that a thumb up? I'm sorry.
No, it was a thumb up. That was great. Thanks, Alex.
Okay. Veronica?
Thank you, Alex. I just wanted to make sure for the record and so that everyone's on the same page that the maps that you're talking about are actually different maps from what is being shown here. And what we're doing today is trying to elicit communities of interest testimony. And the maps that are shown on this screen aren't going to change and don't have the reference points that Johanna and Alex are talking about. That's for when you're looking at drawing district maps, and it'll be a helpful tool once you get to the second phase. But for those that are interested in using these paper maps that are on your screen, those are already available. They're online. They don't have those reference points as much, but it's really just trying to shape and put an area around your community that you're talking about having the same interest. And so to the extent that you have any interest, please do submit these maps, and there are many ways to do that. And then of course, once we get to drawing the districts themselves, we'll get there as well.
Yes, thank you for that point of clarity.
Okay, I think I'll continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. I love this discussion. So this is really wonderful. This is what these are here for, is to clarify anything and give you the information. that we have, and we've gotten, that new data. There's been a lot of updates from the first district outreach meeting to today. So I love this discussion. This slide is here just as a reminder, as we are going to get into the district map. And if folks would like to give more testimony, the 3 questions again, as you're thinking through your community of interest testimony, is to think through what your community has in common. So shared culture, characteristics. Again, and then asking yourself, can it be mapped? Can I then think about my community in terms of geography? Because we are talking about mapping. And then the third one is, again, what is your community's tie or relationship to the city council and the services and the policy that they are in charge of and that they pass? So again, those 3 questions there. These guideposts are also on the community of interest form survey. And I believe some form of this is on that map that was on the previous slide. So this is the timeline. So again, a lot of familiar faces from August 25th until now. We are in the workshop for District 7, and all of the workshops, they have a specific district on them, but they've all been virtual, and the committee and staff wanted to try to focus outreach in each of the specific districts. But members who are residents of the city were welcome at every single outreach hearing, regardless if you were in that district or not. But this was just a way to make sure that we try to reach as many people as possible, and to on that same theme of accessibility and reaching various members of the public who call the City of Redwood City home. On October 9th, this Saturday, we'll have that citywide workshop in Spanish. And I believe that presentation starts at 10 a.m. Correct? I see a nod from Alex. So they've all started at 10 a.m. on Saturday, and this Saturday is no different. So again, we've had a lot of robust discussion this evening, and there are many ways that you can help with the process, be involved in the process, tell your friends and neighbors about this process. And there's a lot of wonderful information on the Redwood City website, and I can go through that to show you again where all the links are. There's a lot of wonderful information, and it gets updated with every new thing that we receive, all the materials there. And again, it's I think the most robust, easily understood redistricting website that I've seen. And I think the staff and the ARC have just done a wonderful job with trying to let the public know information, make it really clear, and make it really clear what the next upcoming steps are. So just want to applaud your staff and everybody who's worked so hard on that. So that's the end of the presentation. So Alex, I was going to go through the website and the districtor. So I see a nod, so I will continue to do that. I don't know if you can, oh, you see my sister. Sorry, I exited there. So that's my sister and my dog on her first day of work. So that's fun that's on there. So let me share the correct screen with you all. It will be, what is this? Okay, do you see the website now? Okay, cool. That's funny. So this is the Redwood City, redistricting website. So we see that wonderful graphic from earlier in the presentation. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger for myself so I can see. And when you scroll down, this particular website too will be up and available for 10 years. So under the Fair Maps Act, the city staff is required to maintain all of the information for a decade. So if you you want to reminisce of all the work that we did in 2021 and 2025, you can go back and look at yourself on the Zoom call, or just kind of get ready for the next redistricting cycle. But all redistricting content, information, any things that were submitted are required to be on the website. And again, it's staff has done a really wonderful job doing that. Any new information will be posted in this gray area. So they always have the upcoming like Zoom information, the past redistricting. There's also the community of interest survey here in multiple languages. So that's always up at the top. There's the background information that Alex covered at the beginning of this presentation. There's more information on the advisory redistricting committee. Here's that wonderful graphic to remind ourselves where we are in the process and the phases. So again, to remind us, we're in phase 2, the listening phase. And this evening and Saturday are our final workshops, and then we will move into the draft map phase of phase 3. But again, we're in the listening process so that we can use all the testimony to create and consider draft maps. There's a section for agenda, meeting minutes, any recordings. So this recording will be on there. All of the past recordings will be on there if you'd like to listen to testimony that's happened in the past. Another section for the community of interest survey. So it was at the top, but it also lives in this section here specifically for that information. Again, it is in multiple languages. Now to get to the districtor mapping tool. And again, you want to use the specific link for Redwood City, and that is here. So we'll click on that in a little bit. We also have instructions to use the districtor tool in English and Spanish. So it's a presentation. And then there's also a video demonstration that we've done that walks through the process. So if you don't want to click on one of these meetings and go to the end of the meeting, you can also click directly on this video. You can also, here's the link to that paper map that we were discussing. So right now it is just that community of interest map that we're focusing on, and you can print it there. And again, as a reminder, if you are going to use the paper map, and if you don't hand it to staff or to a city facility, please send us a picture of it through email. And that best email is at districtelections@redwoodcity.org. So we know a lot of folks want to keep their paper map. They are wonderful. But again, to consider it, you have to send it in to us. So just make sure that we get that copy, because if you draw it and keep it at home, we won't be able to consider it. So you got to please remember to give it to staff so that we can have it a part of the process. So we're going to click on the link. So districtor mapping tool, and this is your specific Redwood City homepage. And this is where, again, the buttons you'd want to use for your city. Because at the top, there is some background information. This button will take you back to the website we were just at. So if you want to use that link, there are 2 buttons to draw maps. So when we had a slide about map submissions, and we talked about submitting communities of interest maps, which has been up and available for a while now. And now we do have your button to create county districts or council districts, excuse me, and you can submit a full draft plan or a partial plan, and I'll walk you through both of these this evening. They are a little bit different, so you'll be able to see the nuances in both of those. The reason why we ask you to use this specific page and those buttons is because at the end, I'll show you the button to submit your map directly to this gallery, which is a public gallery where anyone from the public will be able to see your maps that are submitted. And these, right, we see some communities of interest maps, which is really exciting. And hopefully by the end of the process, we will also see some draft maps, so some full map plans. If you, as you're creating, I think we see some drafts. If you're going and creating your map and aren't ready to share it yet, there's this section here is the work in progress section to draw draft maps. And I believe there are some there. And the about section is just more information on the census and redistricting partners. We're going to go back up and we're going to go through the communities of interest tool first, and then we'll do the districtor tool. So earlier in the presentation, I talked a little bit about census blocks. And so that is the kind of gray geographies that we see throughout the city. So I'm going to just make it a little bit bigger so that we can see the whole screen. You do see the outline of your city, of Redwood City. So you won't be able to draw anything outside of the city limits. And again, it's based on census blocks, which is the smallest unit of geography that we get census data. So we don't split census blocks during this process. Again, thinking through that number one criteria of creating districts of relatively equal size based on census data. So we all are learning about census data through this process. At the top left, there's a couple of things, a search bar where you can insert a location and the city, and it'll zoom your map to that area. You can zoom in and zoom out. And then also you can orient your map pointing north if you move your map around. But the bulk of the kind of work that you'll be utilizing will be on the right side of your screen. You're going to start when you open your map on what they call a pan tool, which is the tool that you can move the map around, and you can also zoom in and zoom out of your map. So we're just going to zoom in this area for our tutorial purposes. You have the tab to draw a district or use the paintbrush tool. There's the erase button. And then the inspector tool, which is this like magnifying glass. If you hover over, well, we got to click it first. If you hover over a census block, it'll give you the total population and the ethnic breakdown of that specific census block. So that's something you can look at if you're interested in. So we're going to go back to the paintbrush tool. And there's a couple of differences between the COI tool and the district-based tool. And one of the main ones is you're able to create as many census blocks or communities of interest as you would like in the COI tool. And here, if you hover over an area and you start clicking them, you can either click or hold your mouse down and drag to create a community of interest, and you can create as many as you'd like. So we can add another one. You could also grab more census blocks or even do it one by one. Another difference between the community of interest drawing tool and the district drawing tool is that in the community of interest drawing tool, you're able to overlap an area. So here we see that there's the yellow area, the blue community of interest, and now a green one. That's because in the community of interest tool, we recognize that some communities can overlap with one another, but when you're drawing districts, you will not be able to overlap a district. It'll either be in one district or the other one. If you don't want to overlap your areas, you click the Lock Already Drawn Communities button, and now I won't be able to grab any more of the blue section. So those are two pretty big differences between the two softwares. So at any point during your map drawing process, you can go and name your community of interest, and you do that by going to the Select tab, clicking on the color, because right now, because they aren't named, there'll be community and then the number. And then you go to the name and you name it whatever you'd like. And I'm just doing generic for example purposes. And here you can describe your community. This is also a difference when you're drawing the district maps. There won't be a way for you to describe your map. But in the community of interest tool, you do have this button. So if you're submitting a map, one of the best ways to kind of give more explanation or testimony on that map is to reference like the number, and then you can come to a meeting and give testimony on it, or to send an email. So we'll show you what we're talking about on the next one. You can also create a specific place in the community of interest tool. So we know that we've heard a lot of schools referenced again this night, or specific locations, specific shopping centers. So you can create the geography above, and you can also click some specific places. One of the differences here is that all of the specific locations you create will always be red. They're all going to be red dots, whether you do 1 or if you do 20. So to find out the specific name of them and to name them, you hover over the area. So this says new point 2. I'm going to select new point 2, and then I can name it. I don't think that's a dog park, but I am going to name it as a dog park. And then you can also describe that location. And then similarly, to delete it, we're going to hover over this dot. It says it's new point 1. I'm going to select new point 1. And to delete any location, you're going to hit on this trash can delete button, and then it will be gone. So those are some differences from drawing. Now to look at the data layers that we have, we do have, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. We do have these school districts that we worked with the staff to get. And yes.
Before you move on to the layering with the school districts, I do see a hand raised.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Veronica, for pointing that out. So I will stop and we'll receive the question. I think it's from Joanna. Is that?
Yeah,
I can't see everybody.
Everybody's time. Thank you. I just had a question on how does the ARC receive this information? So you're showing us how we can put it in, but how is this received to you? Do you receive like graphs or a list of what the communities of interest are, or is there like, does it tabulate how many times you received that information as a community of interest? What does that look like on your end?
Alex, one of you want to tackle that, or I can? And
oh, you can jump in, but basically what we're doing is we'll print out all the maps similar to the last time and include that as part of the public record. So I know that at the very end, Sophia was showing, there was like 3 maps already on the screen, I think, right? And so what we would do is really print that out in a printable form and include that information and any type of narrative that might be in the box of communities of interest as well, to coincide with that, and just include all that information. And we would label them. I think everyone's labeled a number anyways, so that you can see exactly the different submissions and not get them confused.
Yeah.
Sophia, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I've done it in the past, and that's how I'd expect we're doing it again.
Yes, yeah, we will, and I can go back when we're done looking at the community of interest map, but we'll see that every map submission has a specific unique ID. So whether someone names their map or doesn't, there'll be specific unique ID. And then on the redistricting partners end, we can take those down and create PDF maps of the specific image. And for any map that is submitted, or any district-based map or plan that is submitted, we will take that down. We will create PDFs of it and also display the data for the ARC to consider. So they will be receiving those, but also this is it's really important, and the best way to submit your map, and I'll show you, is to click the Save button at the top, and you can share your map specifically to the gallery. So I don't, Joanna doesn't have her camera on anymore, but I'm assuming she's still watching. So the best way is to click that Save button up at the top and to click this green button that says Share to Gallery. And the gallery is the section that had those 3 maps in the home page. So you can name it if you'd like, or you can share it as a work in progress. But this is the best way to share it, to ensure that the ARC receives it. And again, those are all publicly available and open to the public. Another thing to note is if you do submit a map and it's shared to the gallery, we take that as a public submission. So we've had folks ask us if we can delete any maps or take them down. We don't have that capability as redistricting partners to do that. We would have to also talk to staff and refer to them. And then also I've talked to Districtor out of Tufts University. So just as a reminder, if you are playing around with this, and we just know that if you submit any community of interest or a map plan, we will take that as a community of interest testimony, and it will be something that that the ARC will be able to see and consider. So just as a note, because we have received that question elsewhere. So wonderful question on that.
And Sophia, Danny, just another point of clarification that's been asked before. So verbal testimony, like we received tonight from Lisa and Johanna, will that also be tabulated and then sent in some kind of summary form to ARC? How will the verbal testimonies from these district outreach workshops be considered?
I think I'll refer to Alex on that one, but yeah, I'll refer to Alex on that one because I can't remember if you and Kimmy.
We're taking all that information and then we will be sharing that testimony with the advisory redistricting committee.
And two, for verbal or written testimony, we won't be mapping those on our end, again, because we don't want to misinterpret what a member of the public were to say, again, as your consultant. So the best way, if you'd like to show a map, is to use this tool or a paper map or even a napkin, but anything that you draw, we can convert, but any written or verbal testimony will be given to the ARC, but it won't be mapped on our end. And I saw Veronica unmute herself and put her hand up and hand down. So I don't know if I answered what you were going to say, but
Sophia, yeah, thank you. I wanted to make sure that members of this meeting, attendees of this meeting, heard that exact comment, that really submitting a map on top of the verbal testimony would be great, because we would have a visual to go with it. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Oh, I love it when I can when I'm ready and say what staff was wanting to say, but I'm glad that they're here. We're tag teaming all of this. This is a big team effort. Again, shortened timelines. So we're just here trying to make this really accessible. So I'll finish going through this, but I love this dialogue. Again, hopefully Joanna and other members will submit maps after this, and that's the hope. So some of the boundaries that we've had that we've worked with staff to get on Districtor are the school districts, the neighborhood associations. So we have heard those referenced tonight. So you can look at those, and also you can look at the current districts if you're interested. In terms of the data that we have for demographics, we have the total population based on with an ethnic breakdown. And then we also have what is referred to as the citizen voting age population, which is also called CVAP. And this is the data set that we would use if we were to draw any Voting Rights Act districts. And again, if we were to draw a Voting Rights Act district, they would be either Latino, Asian, or Black community. And that would be with legal counsel directing us to do so. But that is something that you can look at. You're also able to build a coalition district by clicking on any variety of these ethnic groups down here, and then clicking back on the population to click coalition population, or on the CVAP to click coalition citizen voting age population. The evaluation tab, it will show you the data based on your community of interest, and also the data of the city of Redwood City. This tab, it's here, but not a lot of folks use it for community of interest, because we know you don't need census data to draw a community of interest. All you need is what you know, what you believe to be your community of interest. So this is just further examples and data, but not something that's necessary to drawing your community of interest. So when you're ready to submit your map, you click on the Save button, and there is a unique URL that is created for your specific map. But again, the best way to submit your map to the ARC so that they can consider it, so that they can look at it, is to click this button, Share to Gallery. And again, you can name it, but you don't have to, because every map will have a unique ID. You can also save it as a draft if you'd like by clicking Work in Progress. You're also able to print it as a PDF. And if you would like to look at your map in another mapping software, such as an Esri software or a Maptitude software, you can download this map and have the files in a different format that you can look at it in another mapping software. So that is there. But again, the best way is to share to gallery so that we can see it. So I'm going to go back and we're going to then move to the district tool. It'll let me. So again, this is the public gallery that we've been referencing, and all maps will be there. And again, we see that this map doesn't have a different name, but it has a unique ID. And when we give maps to the ARC, we will only be referencing the unique ID because members of the public can name maps whatever they want. And we've seen some colorful names. And so we're just going to reference the ID number of the map. And if you'd like to give additional comment on that, the best way is to go back, find the ID number, and then reference the ID number when you're giving comment. So just for consistency's sake, so that we, again, don't misinterpret the map that you are discussing. So that's a great way to reference your map in public comment. So to draw plans for your district, you click on the purple button. And this one I think is new to the city. We do have your 2020 data up, which is really exciting. And so already looking at the screen, you see a couple of differences in terms of what the tools look like. We don't have that search bar there anymore, but we do have the same buttons. The main difference here is this kind of square with this line there, which tells you the ideal population for your district, which is 12,060.43 people. And the other difference is you only will be able to draw 7 districts. You can't draw 8, you can't draw 9, you can draw less, you can draw 1, you can draw 5, but you can only draw up to 6 or 7, excuse me, because that's the number of council members that you have. So to start drawing, you click on a color and then you start drawing away. And you will see that bar move, and it'll let us know where we're at in terms of the ideal population. It'll also give us at the bottom, the deviation of your plan. So what I'm referencing is this number here will give you the max population deviation of your plan, and the allowable total plan deviation for the city and the ARC to consider is 10%. So if you'd like to draw a map, a full draft plan for the ARC to consider, and if you want to try to be within the allowable deviation, that is 10% there. So I'm not going to draw any more districts because this is just an example. I'm not submitting a plan. So we have, again, the locked already drawn districts layer. If you'd like up there, I see Joanna's hand up. I don't know if there's anyone else's hands up. So I'm going to follow what we've been doing, and we'll let Joanna ask a question before I move on.
Okay, thank you very much. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciate this format. This is 1,000 times better than the last process we had. We've moved into a whole new century of technology, and it's really fantastic. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Joanna, you're correct. The mapping tools were not as accessible or available even in the last main redistricting cycle in 2011. And this tool actually was finalized like last year. So it's something that I think is really helpful, especially in our virtual environment. At Redistricting Partners, we love in-person meetings. We love going over paper maps, but just with the environment that we're in today, it's not safe, and Redwood City is all virtual. So we're happy to have this. So again, though, this is just one way that you can submit testimony, not the only way, but we appreciate your comment. We love hearing that we're, the public is happy with what we're doing. We're welcome to criticism as well, but it's fun to hear when that positive feedback. So thank you. So the data layers are the same here as well, with the school districts, the neighborhood, and the current districts. So you can zoom in and zoom out to look at those. The demographics are the same as well. We're showing the total population and the citizen voting age population, as well as that coalition builder. Now for the evaluation tab, what we see in a difference is you'll be able to compare the ethnic breakdown, that thing keeps popping up, to what your district looks like. And again, this is used if you want to look at difference in population, or if you're trying to draw a Voting Rights Act district. So this is the difference breakdown there as well. So again, similar to the community of interest map, the way you want to save your map is by sharing it to gallery. So again, you have that unique URL created. You can save it as a work in progress, as a draft. But again, the best way to allow for the ARC to receive it and not redistricting partners so that we can take it down and look at it. When I mean take it down, not from the site, but just take the data from that map to give the ARC the full data breakdown, is to share it to gallery. And then again, you can share it as a PDF or as another file to look at it in another mapping software. So again, so I'll stop sharing my screen. I'm going to do it correctly this time. We do have the PDFs that explain that in English and Spanish, and we do have the video tutorial, and as well, you can look at the end of every meeting. We also go through the mapping tool demonstration. I do believe I think this is the first or second one where we went through the second tool that shows how you can draw districts, but the rest of them we've gone through the community of interest tool. Yeah, I can't remember if this is the first one or not.
It's the first one.
Okay, cool.
It's the first time I've ever seen it.
Oh, wonderful.
So,
Okay, cool.
yeah,
I
no,
can't remember.
that was the first one. So District 7, I guess, is lucky getting to see it.
Okay, yay. And
then also, just Sophia, or to the public, actually, the participants, you can submit as many maps as you want. So
Yes.
take a crack at it. If you like one version, you can keep working at it. And that's not only doing it through the software, or even if you want to, do it with the paper maps. And both should be, I'm hoping, easier this time around with all the new technology that we have. Because yes, that was one thing that was difficult in 2018, was the technology, because you're still using from 2010 at the time. And so now we're coming to the 2020, so it's good. All right, Sophia, and is that it from your demonstration standpoint?
That's it. That's all I got. Yeah.
Okay. So just with the overall process and the timeline itself, we're going through, we'll start, the advisory redistricting committee will have their first of 3 hearings on October 20th. And I know, Danny, you'll jump in here, but then there'll be 2 council meetings or 3 council meetings, or as many council meetings as needed to get to a final map in probably the new year. And then we have to have this whole thing wrapped up and send a map to the county by April 17th in order to get to the 2022 election. So there is a hard deadline in all of this, but there's ample amount of meetings on the horizon, and I just ask you all to be ambassadors and help us spread the word. And Joanna, I appreciate, because I've seen your stuff all over the place too, so thank you for everything that you're doing to get the word out there. And to anyone else on this call, if you can please get the word out. If you guys need printouts of maps, you can go to our library or even City Hall, or just email us. I'm happy to print out as many as you need to get out to the community as well, because we can't do this alone. So I'll hand it over to you, Danny.
Great. Thanks, Alex. And in closing, I think we had one question at one of the previous public meetings about if you drew a map in 2018 and submitted in 2018, do those maps automatically get passed through, or is everyone starting all over again? So that was just a point of clarification. I know a couple of people had asked. Oh, you're on mute.
Sophia, go ahead.
Oh, me. Okay. Yes, this is a new cycle. We're utilizing a new law, new data. So even data that was submitted using 2010 data, that wouldn't be something that the ARC would really be able to be considered, because when we think about that, the number one criteria, it's redistricting based on census data, which is 2020. If someone is interested in drawing a map again, the way that they did a couple years ago, you can do that, but you must do it now and resubmit. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. I think it was important because we don't want anybody to assume any things that if they've been through this process in the past, that it might still be relevant. So it's really important to know that we all have to get our new thoughts and new communities of interest and new mapping done. And I want to echo Sophia and Alex. Have been a part of these outreach meetings from pretty much the beginning. And I just want to thank our community members as well, because it was feedback that we got after each one of these outreach meetings and these clarifying questions that helped us define what more information needed to be sort of ferreted out, and what things seemed to be confusing, and what definitions people didn't really know about. And it was super important to have people give us feedback about these workshops and how they can be improved, and perhaps what are some of the language pieces that we use. And we know what ARC means, but we weren't really, we really didn't keep saying the advisory redistricting committee, those kinds of things. I just really appreciate where the first workshop was to where this last district workshop is today. It's just really great. And I see Taylor Pope has a question or hand raised before I officially close the meeting. Taylor, you want to unmute yourself, or that's what your screen shows with your hand raised?
Hi, I just missed my chance to testify before and wanted to slip an extra one in. I'm technically in District 6 right now. I'm on the south side of Burnside, but the majority of what I would consider my neighborhood is part of District 7. I'm in a small cutout that's north of Alameda that was included in District 6. And I just wanted to testify that I feel like our neighborhood, which is bound by a very walkable neighborhood that people come to from other parts of the city, both on foot and in car to walk around. Neighbors cross the street to talk to each other and interact. And it's always felt very weird to me that Fernside, which is kind of the artery of a very walkable small neighborhood, is used as a dividing line where it is, especially being so close to Alameda, which is a much more of a barrier between communities.
Thanks, Taylor. And I see also Christina Umhofer now has her hand raised. So Christina, you have some thoughts?
Yeah, hey, good morning, or good morning, good grief, good evening, Danny. So I'm actually on the redistricting site right now, and just kind of playing with the map. And it actually has shaded out Canyon neighborhood, can't be shaded. Is there a reason for that?
Is it the donut in Canyon? Because there's the county unincorporated donut. So
I have absolutely no idea.
So right in the middle of Canyon is it's completely surrounded by the city, but it is unincorporated San Mateo County. So when you try to shade that center area, you probably won't be able to. It's only around that unincorporated area, but it's completely surrounded by the city limits. It's really funky.
And does that include Upton as well, like Alameda down to Upton, like close to
there is? So that's another unincorporated little, it's amazing, that little street right there off of Upton, Alameda and Jefferson. It is also county unincorporated area, just that little block. It's really unique. That I always trip out about, Christina, about it.
Interesting. Okay, I did not know that. Thank you all very much. I hope that educated you too. Wow, interesting. Okay.
No
fantastic.
problem.
Thank you.
All right.
And that's a great clarification, Alex. Is there a way to, on the redistrictor, say that if you see a gray area, it means it's an unincorporated pocket, so people don't keep trying to include it in one of their maps, and they just just get frustrated? Or I don't know if there's any room to put definitions of unincorporated areas in the district.
So I'm going to defer to Sophia, and maybe because I don't know if they have more information on that, but I believe you can't fill in that. That's probably what Christina's running into right now, but it just is, how do we articulate that's what's going on?
That's a wonderful point. We haven't received that question. I think what we can do is we can update the language on that homepage. That is that first section, but I don't believe there is a way to add it specifically in the function where you're drawing a map. But I will ask our data team and ask Districtor if there's something that we can do. But that's really wonderful feedback. So I don't have a clear answer, but I can get it and report that back to Alex and staff.
Perfect. Thank you.
Isn't this great community conversation? Taylor Pope, I still see your hand raised. And before I again end the meeting or call for last comments, I want to make sure that you asked your, oh, there you go. You brought your hand down. Okay, terrific. All right. So anyway, last thoughts. Again, if anybody has any outreach opportunity to include the city website link for these outreach conversations, for links to the maps, whether it might be in a school bulletin or a church bulletin or a special interest bulletin, please let Alex know. There's a way in which you might have some connections or some newsletters or some outreach that you can reach some folks to make sure that we engage all voices in our community in this process, because the more voices we hear, I think the better the process is going to be, of course. So with that, Alex, I think I'm going to officially close out the meeting. And once again, I'm going to have to read it, and I'm so sorry. But it says, thanks all for joining for the District 7 redistricting workshop. And I think there were members outside of our district tonight too, which is great. Everybody's invited. Our next virtual redistricting workshop will be held for all districts. And it's this Saturday, October 9th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. We want all of our members to attend. Please note that this meeting will be conducted in Spanish, but English translation will be available through the dial-in. And Alex, since it's virtual, again, it would be the same Zoom and same link and as before, as we've done for tonight. And in the meantime, again, we just encourage those maps. Thank you for your verbal testimony tonight. But if you follow that up with your maps, that would be absolutely terrific. And we'll be moving to the mapping phase. That you heard it tonight for the first time, that we've got the census data. So now the mapping tools based on census data will be available for everyone. And if you have any questions or comments, we're supposed to email districtelections@redwoodcity.org. So I hope I've covered everything. I hope I've said thank you to everyone tonight. We had a great dialogue. Thanks for participating. And I don't see any last thoughts, but otherwise we'll say good night, go Giants, be healthy, be safe.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.